Skeptics often like to argue that Sasquatch is a foreign concept imposed on traditional native beliefs by Westerners, or they argue that native stories about wild people of the woods are actually just native attempts at communicating cultural lessons to their future generations using heavily anthropomorphized and universal motifs found in cultures around the world. They argue that taking native stories about wild people too literally is somehow undermining the overall meaning of the original native storytellers.
The extremely wide prevalence of these similar stories would be compelling if basket women were described like Bigfoot, but they are not. In the stories, they are often individual beings, not a race or a species. They also always use baskets, live in houses, wear dresses, and roast children over fires. Like the giants, they're basically just your typical run-of-the-mill fairy tale villains. And here's the thing, you very likely have heard a variation of the basket woman story.
This approach isn't new. It's been around for many years. This is Dr. Claude Lévi-Strauss, an accomplished French anthropologist and sociologist. Dr. Strauss visited British Columbia in 1973 with the intent to study native cultures, and of particular interest to him were native traditions about wild people of the woods, like Zuniqua, the hairy giantess of Kwakwaka'wakw tradition. This is a clip of Dr. Strauss giving a lecture on his thoughts of Zuniqua.
The mouth of the Tsonokoa can be described as having pursed lips, as a matter of fact, to explain that it cries hoo, something of the kind. I don't know. The Swaiwe mask has as a fundamental character a hanging tongue, protruding and hanging. And in the Tsonokoa, there is also something hanging, which is not the tongue, but the breast, which are always a hanging breast, and this is very much emphasized in the literature. So the Swaiwe mask belongs essentially to the social world, while the Tsonokoa is an antisocial being. And even more, its main part in the mythology is kidnapping of children. That is, instead of bringing the ancestors to the lineage, taking away the descendant. We have here a very neat inverted relationship.
Notice how he uses the word mythological. Merriam-Webster defines mythological as an allegorical narrative, that is to say, symbolic fiction. And that sounds like a perfectly valid interpretation of the native stories on wild people of the woods. Except that many natives, especially those of older generations, would strongly disagree with such a strictly skeptical interpretation. The following clip is also from 1973, and it demonstrates a brief interaction between Dr. Strauss and a Nootka native carver. Watch what happens when Dr. Strauss tries to put native stories into the context of social science, and how the Nootka gentleman responds.
But if you were to carve a Tsonokoa, how would you do it?
I would do it either of the two ways.
With deep-set eyes?
I would do it with deep-set eyes. We have, see, I'm not from the Kwagyo country.
Yes,
I'm from the west coast of Vancouver Island. But where we come from, we have wild women too.
Yes.
And when I carve her, where is it? Right here. I carve her with the eyes open too.
You carve it with the eye open.
But small eyes.
Yes, that's another way of expressing the blindness or that she has trouble in seeing.
I made a mask for Peter, a wild woman, and the eyes are real deep set, way back. But the reason for making it like that wasn't to try and make her look blind, it was just to make her brow, pronounce her brow. If you bring the brow out, the eyes automatically go back.
Yes, of course.
And to make her look strong, you give her deep, heavy eyebrow. It's the same with the cheekbones. Bringing the cheekbones out like that.
But in the old mythology, it is always explained that she's blind or she has trouble seeing, or that she's half asleep also.
Half asleep?
Half asleep,
Half
yes,
asleep.
yes.
We got stories at home. I never heard a story of her being blind. Never. But we got lots of stories about she's half asleep. That
yes.
she's easy to trick.
Yes.
This the guy that killed her, where I'm from, she's, I guess, been half asleep. She's not too smart. He tricks her lots of times. He gets her fingers caught in a stump. He was splitting a stump.
Yes, I know the story.
And got her hand. Well, she's kind of, I don't know if the right word is dozy, or she's sleepy, not too smart.
Oh, yes, dozy, and when she appears in dances, she all the time she falls asleep, and it's necessary to push her.
Right.
And, is it like that?
But not, that's not, I don't think, why, I never heard at home any stories of her actually being blind. I don't think that,
How separate are the two stories in distance and geography?
Well, these are completely different people, of course.
How far apart?
If this gentleman is Nootka, and I'm referring to Kwakiutl stories, and
some places
there
it's
is
about 30
enormous.
miles.
Yes, it's not very far.
30 miles.
Would there be anything to
Well,
explain?
but the
this?
traditions are quite different.
Oh yeah, and there's some places like around Cotsino. The people in Cotsino and Hattizit, they're not very far apart.
And
they're-
there's still this difference.
Oh yeah. But the closer you get, of course, the closer you get to where the West Coast people bump into the Quagils people, the closer things start to be similar.
But she plays different part and different roles.
I don't know if it's borrowed. I think the people up north, they got stories. The people in Saanich, they got stories. We all seen wild people. Like people today, they don't believe those stories. They say that it's made up, you know. But I think that our people seen wild women and wild men, and I think the Quagil people seen wild women and wild men, and I think the people that live in Saanich seen wild women and wild men. And the difference is, I guess, is just how they seen those people that's in the bush, what they call wild women, wild men, wild people.
And you have stories too that she steals children and make them blind
Put
with
pitch on their eyes, yeah.
with pitch. Yes.
Yeah, she's chewing
Right.
spruce gum all the
Yes,
time.
right.
Pitch from spruce trees, chewing
Right.
it, and she makes her lips smack. You know,
Oh, you see,
when she's chewing. That's
yes.
why the lips like that. She's chewing, trying to make it sound delicious. And those little kids, they want it. So when she gets real close, she's going to give them a piece. Put it on their eyes, block their eyes, and make them so they can't see where they're going. So if they jump out of her basket, they're not going to be able to run and tell what happened. So she put them in her basket, and then she runs away to her house.
The unnamed Nootka carver readily corrects some of the assumptions that the academic has. He calmly explains how the features of his wild woman art are based on physical appearance, rather than being strictly symbolic. Importantly, he also tells the skeptic how his own Nootka people have seen the wild people of the woods, and adamantly disagrees with those who say that the stories are made up. He also shares his belief that other neighboring tribes have also interacted with the wild people of the woods, and that differences in their traditions come down to separate encounters among different tribes. Yes, anthropomorphizing does occur in storytelling, but we have to start learning that just because it is present, it does not entirely explain the origin of a story or tradition. This skeptical explanation falls short, and in many cases is reductive, and can be offensive to native peoples who have seen these beings of the woods. Please take native voices into account when discussing native views on Sasquatch. Not all tribes or nations share the same views on these beings, but many of them have beliefs in a very real, non-mythological being, and these voices should not be ignored any longer. Thank you for watching.